Ooh, spooky glasses, spooky reflection on glasses. Yeah, I've got my notes on the iPad there, so it's kind of, okay, yeah. All right, that was fun. All right, so today we're talking about voting as a kingdom citizen. Now, for the last month, I've pretty much been talking about Jesus starting a new kingdom instead of trying to change the system as it stood. He says, well, politics isn't working. I'm going to open up a new nation, can have a new nation do that. However, I said that didn't mean that Jesus failed to act politically, that Jesus acted practically in the politics of his day. He did it in kind of a radical way, a different way, but all that. So he acted. He didn't just say, well, I'm going to forget about this world. We're just going to focus on this next world. He didn't do that. He focused. He spent time trying to improve the lives of the people who were there, and even talking to leaders of his day in order to make things better, and even to help them make changes that will be positive. So he saw himself, or he acted as a citizen, intending to change the system out as it is, while putting in real effort to establishing a new nation. Now, in his day, to be honest, Jesus was a non-Roman citizen, and so was somewhat disenfranchised. He didn't have a voice in Roman politics. He did in Jewish politics, although that voice was still pretty weak because he wasn't a Judean, he was a Galilean Jew. And so as a Galilean Jew, he had two systems that he could speak to. He could speak to Herod as king of Galilee, and he can speak to the priest-elder system that was based in Jerusalem as part rulers, as rulers over the Jewish people all over the world. Jesus didn't speak to Herod directly, except once when he called him a fox. And probably because he felt it was pointless. And frankly, he had bigger fish to fry. He was about changing the whole system for all the people of Yahweh all over the world. And he had a voice. Actually, he kind of had a loud voice because he represented a whole bunch of Galileans, disenfranchised Galileans, and others beside that. So he kind of had a voice. So let me ask you, if voting was a thing, would Jesus have voted? I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know if he would have considered voting important or not. I suppose that his only vote would have been between Herod and the high priest, both of whom he had sharp words to say to them. And would he have voted for one or the other? I just don't know. I have no idea. Now, I have some votes. I have some votes. I have some votes. I'm voting. I know. I have some thoughts about how we should vote as citizens of God's kingdom. Now, we're not citizens. If we are citizens of God's kingdom, we're not citizens of this world. However, this world gives us some of the rights of citizens, like voting. So should we participate in that? How do we do that? How do we vote if we are going to vote? All right, so I just have some thoughts. So first of all, if we're voting, then we're voting for the peace of our temporary home. This world is our temporary home. It's not the permanent home. It's just where we happen to be staying right now until we can get to our real home. So Jeremiah said to the Jews who were in exile in Babylon, they were far away from their real home. He says, you need to work for the peace of the city that you live. You're there in that city, and so try to improve the place while you're there, using what resources you have. Paul told us to pray for the peace of the nation that we're in. So it's good to remember that peace doesn't mean to be without conflict, but to achieve well-being and wholeness for the nation. So if voting can achieve the well-being of the communities in which we live, well, then I guess that's a good thing. We are not citizens of our home, but we are ambassadors of Jesus to this place that we happen to be in. So we need to represent his love and his care for the people living in our home. And if we can do that through voting, if we can show God's love through voting, then we should do that. Now, if we're going to vote, the second thing is, let's not vote out of hate or dislike. If we're voting as an extension of our anger or our personal dislike, that's not going to fulfill the righteousness of God. Like what James says, anger does not fulfill the righteousness of God, nor necessarily to obtain peace for our temporary nation. When we vote for a candidate, we don't get to vote against anyone. Oh my goodness. There are many other times that I wish I could just go down the candidates and just say no, 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 things like that. That would be an awesome option. But we don't have that option. All we can do is vote yes. So when we're voting yes, we don't, or if we're voting yes for someone, we don't vote yes for someone out of spite against the other candidate. We have to vote yes for someone because that yes is going to be a positive move for the people that we're voting for that district or nation or whatever. I mean, if we're going to vote for a candidate, we have to vote for someone. And we have to make sure that they benefit the home that we're in, not just because they're better than the other person. So we got to remember, voting out of spite, that doesn't actually benefit anybody. We need to, and then we need, I think, and here's the real kingdom value here, is that we need to vote to benefit poor and disenfranchised people who are in the margins. The primary principle of Jesus is to stand with and speak out for the outcast and the poor. And all of his other politics flow from that principle. And this means that our voting shouldn't be because of some half-considered idea of love. Oh, well, you know, this is just better for our nation or whatever. No, I think we should really nail down what is it, what measure, what proposition, what candidate is actually going to benefit the poorest of the poor, the lowest of the low, the people who are outcasts in society. Who's going to actually benefit those people? I think that that we really need we really need to not vote for someone because they're going to benefit us personally, unless we happen to be disenfranchised. I think that we need to benefit. Think about who is going to benefit the lowest one. Here's an interesting thing, is that I have a friend who he was just not going to vote because he didn't care and he didn't really know who to vote for anyway. But instead of throwing his ballot away, what he did is he found someone, a friend of his, who was poor, and that person couldn't vote. And so he asked her, "How would you vote?" And then he wrote down that on the ballot and sent it in for her. So he he waived his vote and voted for the sake of this person who was disenfranchised. It was a direct way for his vote to speak for a disenfranchised person. So that was a cool thing, I thought. So maybe we also want to think, well, what would homeless folks want to vote? What about people who can't vote because they don't have an address? What would an immigrant that hasn't been naturalized, what would they want you to vote? What about people of color who have not been allowed to vote in your community? You know, the thing is that even if we don't know their opinion, I bet you it wouldn't take a lot of effort to ask and find out. In fact, the most direct question I can think of the answer is, would Jesus vote? And I think that the real answer is Jesus would vote if it would help the marginalized, the outcast of society. If Jesus knew this would help the marginalized and outcast society, then he would vote. And otherwise, maybe he wouldn't bother. I don't know. All right, so we need to recognize also that there's a lot of issues that are just complicated. And sometimes it's harder to tell what's going to help with the disenfranchised, what's really going to bring peace to the society that we're living in. And there isn't a clear-cut answer all the time. Sometimes we can see clearly what Jesus might want, and other times it's more murky. I'm not sure, which way to go on this. People who are sincere Jesus followers, who are on fire for helping the needy and the outcast, they can disagree. Sometimes we can see both sides. One measure or proposition is clear as day that'll help the disenfranchised, but then the next one, I'm not too sure. Well, my recommendation is vote where you are clear. And don't vote if you really just don't know. If you're voting to, you do your research, you do your homework, and then if you still can't tell, well, then maybe it's okay to let it go. You don't have to vote for everything. If you're voting to benefit others, especially the outcast, and you just can't make that determination, then maybe you should just skip it. Go to another one. If all the major candidates for an office, if they all seem pretty shady, skip it. Let the other people. Now there are some people who are saying, "Hey, now, if we gotta only vote for one of two parties that count, or we have to vote against this evil candidate." And I say that there's many people who want to tell you that there's only one good vote, and that's to vote their way. Okay, look, that may be true with some issues and some candidates, but if you've done the research and you can't tell the difference, it's your vote, and you have to make a determination. You're the one whose vote is going to determine it. And if you can't do that, don't let somebody else tell you how you ought to vote. Unless that person is a disenfranchised person, and then let them, maybe they can determine it. Now, for a lot of years, for decades, actually, I didn't even vote. I just determined, well, I'm not a part of this nation, and I'm a part of the kingdom of God, so I'm not going to vote because I don't really have the right to vote. I followed the issues, but I didn't take part of that part of the practice. Now, I did participate politically in other ways, especially local politics, by helping the homeless and getting involved in ways that we can help the homeless. And I believe that you can have a principled stand which says, I'm not going to vote. I think that is a possibility. I am voting now, but at the time I thought that it was actually better. At this point, I'm at the place that not voting does more damage than actually voting, and I recognize that this nation gives me the right to vote as a citizen. And so, just like Paul used the rights of a Roman citizen, well, then I have the right to use the rights that they give me. Yeah, I'm not stealing anything. But some people, they don't vote because they just think it doesn't do any good. That doesn't matter who they vote for or what issues. It's just all going to go to crap anyway. And maybe that's true, but maybe it's not. But I think that if you just are just making that blanket assumption without actually looking at the issues, without doing your homework, then I think really you're just being lazy. You're voting because you don't really care. So I don't think that's, again, is on your ballot, the ballot that's there, is there any race or issue that would make a difference for immigrants? If there is, then maybe you should vote for that. Is there any vote or issue that's going to make a difference for homeless folks or people who are almost homeless? Then maybe that's something to vote about. Is it going to make a difference for people who are overpunished in jail? Is it going to make a difference for people who are hungry? Will it make a difference for people who are being killed in our country or in others? If it can, then you really need to seriously consider acting by that ballot. That's a serious way, a serious thing that you should be involved in, because we should probably take every opportunity and resource to help those who are in desperate need. Jesus said that we will be judged by every small action that we do and every small word that we speak. This also means that if we don't speak a small word or do a small action that could save a life, that could feed the hungry, that could give someone a home, then we will be judged for that as well. So both voting and not voting are serious moral decisions. If you have a principled conviction to not vote, then may God bless your stand. I mean, I have nothing to say to that. But if you're just making excuses to avoid action, well, then I'm going to ask you to reconsider that. Again, these are my thoughts. I'm not pointing out Bible verses, a lot of Bible verses here to say, well, this is what Jesus has to say, because Jesus didn't say anything about voting. But I think that these principles, these are things that I base that on and that I think are important. Okay? Anyway, may the Lord bless you and keep you and give you peace.